Hello, welcome everyone to the last episode of our season. My name is Heike, and today we are going to talk about Unified RBAC. And I have Gadi with me. Gadi, please introduce yourself.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Gadi. I'm a product manager at Microsoft Defender XDR Group, and I own, as Heike said, Unified RBAC.
Yes, so I couldn't have asked anyone better to join. So before we actually get into the Unified RBAC, let's quickly talk about how it was before. Like, why did your team actually start working on unifying that? Like, what are the challenges that our customers with probably multiple products have?
Yes, that's a great way to open discussion about RBAC. So before that, for our audience, just to remind you that RBAC stands for Role-Based Access Control. That's actually the place, the heart of everything, where admins are able to decide who see what, who can perform what actions, and who is not allowed to see or do anything. As our customers can remember, a few years ago, our Defender products were separated. Each product had its own portal: Defender for Endpoint, Office 365, Defender for Identity, and Defender for Cloud Apps. So once these products were started to be migrated into the XDR portal, previously called Microsoft 365 Defender, we thought that on top of the capability to accept and respect roles and permissions defined in each of the products, there is a reason to create one unified and centralized RBAC mechanism. Because eventually, if a SOC admin had to go into the journey of allowing any analyst to see data, unified data, coming from all the Defender products in one place in our alerts queue or incidents queue, or even in advanced hunting experience, he had to go through at least 4 different interfaces, 4 different products, not necessarily with the same terminology of stages. The granularity level was different. The level of assignment was different. For example, in Defender for Endpoint, the ability to assign a role was at the level of user groups, while in Office 365 and in Defender for Cloud Apps, the assignment is still at the level of individual users. Mm-hmm. So there wasn't a full consistency across all the Defender products. So then came the idea and our North Star to create one unified RBAC, as I like to say, one RBAC to rule them all. And this is where a unified RBAC just came to life.
Okay. So I think it's important to mention, I didn't even know that the different workloads had also a different concept of RBAC, like, with groups or with individuals and different terminology. Obviously, like, yes, of course. So, and the journey it's not that, wow, it's right there, right? So, I mean, you work with the different workloads, you try to understand what is needed, what are the individual permission levels that you need to then bring into that unified RBAC. You're not just taking all of this and bring it together under one page. So there's a little bit more work behind the scenes, I would assume.
Correct.
But that's not important for our customers. For our customers, it will be the journey. I want to enable unified RBAC. And then what's then? Like, what are the steps that someone needs to do before we go into the demo? I think we will look at it as well.
Yeah. So RBAC is a very complex matter as a whole because it requires logic. It requires to understand what are the different experiences. What, as a SOC admin, who are my personas, my different personas, and the SOC structure is not necessarily consistent across all organizations and customers. So it was a challenge for us trying to figure out how to design unified RBAC in a way that on one hand will allow maximum efficiency for SOC admins while creating their roles, their custom roles, and allowing their staff, their SOC analysts, to perform their daily work. Mm-hmm. On the other hand, to make sure that they have the level of flexibility, so they will be able implementing the minimum and the least privileges mindset, So analysts will be able doing exactly what they're expected to do and not be overexposed. So it's very tricky. It was challenging to design the product in a way that it will fit across different organizations, different type of organizations, will allow SOC admins to efficiently create their custom roles and to grant their users the exact permissions they need in order to perform their daily operations. And on the other hand, not to be overexposed to data that they are not eligible to see or to.
So, and of course, there is the concept of building your own permission set, but there are also a couple of already existing permissions. And is this across the different workloads and now also combined in one? So how is this now still considering, right? I mean, you cover different products, but what are these standard roles that we have in Unified RBAC?
We haven't defined or created templates or predefined roles. We actually prefer that every SOC admin will create their custom roles based on their personas, based on their needs, and based on their organization structure. However, we understand that customers who are already using the Defender products and already are the XDR customers who are using all the richness of the what we have to offer, they already have their roles in the different workloads. Yeah. So as part of designing Unified RBAC, we created this very efficient tool for allowing admins to import existing roles from the various Defender products with full parity to Unified RBAC. So admin can decide when adopting Unified RBAC and deciding to transition their tenant to start using Unified RBAC, either starting from scratch. It's a good opportunity to make some clearance and make sure that you have exactly the roles that you need. But on the other hand, you can decide to start from importing existing roles into Unified RBAC and then make the clearance, make the adaptations to what you really need.
So, and then once you turn it on and you say, I'm opting into Unified RBAC, and you import your settings, can you still go to the old one and do something and now you have a hiccup? Or are we disabling the old one, or are we keeping re-importing? What's the scenario here?
So at any time, per workload, there is only one RBAC model which is active. Eventually, every experience in our portal, for example, alerts queue, okay? A user access the alerts page. We need to know how to calculate whether this user, how to authorize this user, and where from to take the user's permission. So it's either Defender for Endpoint individual RBAC is active, or Unified RBAC is active for Defender for Endpoint. So we created this. We understand that our customers need to gain some confidence with the new RBAC model. As I said, RBAC is very complex, and they want to make sure that everything works as expected. So we are not forcing our customers yet to move to Unified RBAC. We allow an opt-in mode. Customers can create their custom roles in Unified RBAC, validate, maybe import existing roles, make some clearance, make adjustments, test per workload, activate Unified RBAC, see that everything works as expected, revert back if they are not ready yet organization-wide to move to Unified RBAC. And once they are ready, they can decide that they are transitioning each and every workload to start working with Unified RBAC. So to your question, at any time, one RBAC model is active. Once Unified RBAC is activated for a specific workload, again, based on my example, Defender for Endpoint, we are no longer calculating access based on existing roles in Defender for Endpoint individual RBAC model.
Okay, cool. So, and if they enable the Unified RBAC for Defender for Endpoint, for instance, and they make changes here and then disable it again for Defender for Endpoint, this is not going to be carried over to the old. This is really making it ready for Unified RBAC. If they're not happy, they can toggle it off and continue there.
Yeah, yeah, you're very much correct, because we want to make sure that our SOC admins will be confident also with testing Unified RBAC. So any changes made within Unified RBAC, even taking imported roles, making some adjustments, making some changes, these changes are only within Unified RBAC. We are not impacting any existing roles in any of the Defender products. So if an admin decides to revert back to the individual RBAC model, everything continues to work as was just before.
Thank you. So I think, Gadi, we are ready to have a look into, how it looks like.
Okay, Heike, just before we go into the demo, I would like to address a question that I'm being asked pretty much frequently from customers. What about the Entra ID global roles, like global administrators, security operator, users who are already elevated? What would happen with these users while activating Unified RBAC? So the answer is that no worries. Users that are still elevated with those global roles managed in Entra ID will still be respected by the XDR portal. And we know how to map between these global roles into the specific list of permissions in XDR portal. However, Unified RBAC is just the place for those customers who are very much concerned from using Entra ID global roles, which allow a broad range of capabilities for their users. This is the opportunity to evaluate the product and to decide that they would narrow their users' accessibility by using custom roles in Unified RBAC, and then they can remove those users from being elevated with those global roles if not necessary.
Perfect. But now let's go.
Yeah, so now we can move to our demo. So if you can see that that's our XDR portal. And in order to find Unified RBAC, you just need to scroll down here on the left menu, right to the permissions area. And this page is actually like a landing page that allow you to quickly access all your different RBAC areas in your portal. As I mentioned at the beginning of this session, we are still respecting those individual workload RBAC models. So you can see here a quick access to Defender for Endpoints RBAC, Defender for Office, Defender for Cloud Apps. And here, the first section, Microsoft Defender XDR, that's the place where the magic happens with Unified RBAC. So that's what you need to choose in order to access Unified RBAC. So that's the main page where you will see all your custom roles that you either created from scratch or you imported from any of the supported workloads. I would like to show you, let's take an example, a case of which you want to create a new custom role for your SecOps analyst tier 3, for example. Tier 3 in your organization allow analysts to respond to incidents, actually at the level in the case of Defender for Endpoint, at the level of live response. And let's say that with Defender for Office cases, Defender for Office alerts and incidents, these analysts will be able to quarantine and maybe to perform advanced actions like search and purge on emails. So you can start creating your custom role here. Let's say that we'll call that custom role SecOps Analyst Tier 3. You can add description if you feel like. So here is the place where all the permissions are managed, and we categorized permissions into 3 different categories: security operations, security posture, and authorization and settings. Authorization and settings is a special category that includes permissions mostly for admins. These are high-ranked permissions, but we are now creating the role for the SecOps Analyst Tier 3, so most of the permissions are here. If you want to use the customized methodology in order to define your role, so you select custom permissions again here, and here you will find the different permissions. Next to each permission, you have a tooltip that explains in general the intent of this permission. And for our Tier 3 analyst, we'll choose Alerts Manage, Response Manage, Basic Live Response, Advanced Live Response. And for the Office events, let's choose the Quarantine and the Advanced Actions permissions.
So how did you know that now response is only for endpoint response and not response to other workloads? Do I need to hover over? Like, how did you? I mean, it's your feature, but for me, it's like, okay, response is response to identity, to endpoint, to whatever.
Correct. Response, that level of response is cross workloads. Okay. Workload agnostic. It will be used with all workloads. There are some experiences that are workload specific. The live response, for example, is an experience which is being used only in Defender for endpoint. The email and collaboration quarantine is being used only in Defender for Office. When we designed the unified RBAC permissions model, we tried to make it as generic as possible. So at the stage of selecting permissions, there will be as minimum as possible permissions which are workload specific. There are some sensitive permissions, as you can see, everything that is related with email and collaboration. And here, of course, when handling raw data, the ability to access the email content or the email headers, these are sensitive permissions that we would like to enable SOC admins to granularly assign these permissions to their users.
So when you say raw data, what can I see there? The email itself?
Yeah, so we created two different permissions. One permission to see only the email headers, one that is checked here. And this one is the ability to see the email content.
And because you already selected for the security data, the email collaboration, quarantine, and advanced action, this one enabled. Got it.
Mm-hmm. There are some dependencies in this model. So if you decide to select the advanced actions, it has a dependency that's based on the best practices. Any user that will have access to advanced actions will be able also to see email headers. As you can see here, the security data basic read is the most basic permission to allow analysts to see security data in a read mode. So any other permission that allow actions on security data will drag this dependency. Obviously, you will have the read.
So it also means if additional workloads come into the Defender portal, they all can already see that security data and respond to that security data. So you don't have to go back and now grant specific new permissions for a new workload.
That's a very good question. At this stage that you see here, while we're selecting permissions for this specific role, we're actually defining the first stage of the what. As you can see here, except of these specific permissions we discussed, you don't see any reference to workloads.
No.
Because at this stage, we want the admin to decide, hey, my persona is SecOps analyst tier 3. In my organization, these are the capabilities that I would like this persona to be able to perform. And then after selecting the permissions and completing the what, the next stage is the assignment. Now, I remind the context, SecOps analyst tier 3, list of permissions selected. And now, when it comes to assignment, then the question of the organization structure is come. Because there might be a SOC team that is constructed out of one team. Okay, this team is an XDR team. They are investigating everything that comes in terms of security. So they should be able to access any data coming from any data source. So let's take, for example, an XDR team. And for this team, I can select from my entry ID. This list comes from my entry ID. Let's take a sample of a user group, let's say sales, and also an individual user that is called ABC, for example. And as you can see here, we normalized across all the Defender products. So you are able to assign a role either to security group or to individual users. Everything that comes here is taken from your entry ID. And now, after you selected the team and the individual users, for this team specifically, XDR team, so here you need to select the data sources that you want these analysts to be exposed to. You can see here the list of available data sources on your tenant. So I have here the Defender for Endpoint and Defender for Vulnerability Management. They come together. Office and identity. In the future, once Defender for Cloud Apps very soon will be supported as well in Unified RBAC, you will be able seeing here also Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps. If you have a license for Defender for Cloud, on this specific tenant, I don't have a license for Defender for Cloud, but on your tenant, Defender for Cloud is also supported by Unified RBAC. So you will see here another entry for Defender for Cloud. So this is the place where you decide what will be the scope and what would be the context of these users based on the permissions selected in the previous stage, what they will be able to see. So if I select everything like an XDR team, then I have this option as well, include future data sources. This specific assignment, once Defender for Cloud Apps will be added by Microsoft, it will be automatically added to that assignment. And that goes to your question earlier, Heike. Admin will not have to go assignment by assignment and add manually Defender for Cloud Apps. It will be added automatically.
Okay, so but even though you selected before the permission to manage and live response, if the data source is only Defender Office 365, they can't do it. So you could have basically a SOC analyst, tier 3 email and collaboration team or something. Then you would only select the Office piece and they would not be able to respond to. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Correct. And let me demonstrate that. One of the values that Unified RBAC offers is the ability to create several assignments within one role. A role represents a persona in your SOC team, but within that persona, there might be different teams. So we had one team is an XDR team, and I might have an MDO team, for example, that these users are investigating only data coming from Defender for Office. Mm-hmm. So for these users, with the same permissions I selected earlier, I can uncheck everything except Defender for Office. And the result of that assignment is that for these users, they will have those permissions. Obviously, permissions that are Defender for Endpoint only, like the live response, are irrelevant for these users.
Okay, so now I guess, Gadi, the last thing is next, and that's it. And then you review everything and you have it. You know, Gadi, I guess it's like every single organization, they need to think that through. They need to understand who should have what role. You mentioned they work with groups. So we have Entra ID groups. But if I remember correctly, there was something with Defender for Endpoint groups. Is this related to RBAC, or am I mixing something up here?
No, you're absolutely correct. In Defender for Endpoint, and actually it's beyond Defender for Endpoint, we are offering as part of our devices inventory the ability to manage device groups. Device groups are being used in order to create groups that collect set of devices with similar properties. For example, based on regions or based on domains, etc. Device groups actually define the data segregation, the Defender for Endpoint data segregation, and these are still respected by Unified RBAC. That means that customer that already is using device groups for segregating access to Defender for Endpoint data, it will be respected as it is being now with Defender for Endpoint RBAC, exactly the same while moving to Unified RBAC.
So, but this is still in a different section, the device groups. It's not in your current permissions and role in Unified RBAC.
Correct. The place that end users are managing the device groups is no change. It's the same place under settings, endpoints, device groups, and behind the scenes, we are making the match. Users that are assigned to specific device groups and are assigned also in Unified RBAC to be able performing set of actions in Defender for Endpoint. Behind the scenes, we are performing this match between permissions in Unified RBAC and the scope that is defined in device groups. And then when this user access, for example, advanced hunting or alerts or incidents, and the question is whether to expose this user to Defender for Endpoint data, yes or no. This user, if he has the permission, he will have access. and he will see data coming only from those devices that this user is scoped to.
So, but I can't create a group here that says SecOps analysts Italy and then give them only devices from Italy. You have to switch currently. You have to also go to the endpoint section. Yeah. And maybe one day we will bring it all together.
This is the plan eventually to expand the scoping mechanism in XDR portal and to make everything in one place, exactly as we did with permissions. We took all the workload hosted in XDR portal and we are controlling everything within one place, the unified RBAC. In the future, not that far, we will, on top of unified RBAC, will allow to define some scoping mechanism and to enable our customers to segregate data that their analysts are accessing.
Perfect. So when you started, actually, you already hopped right into Defender XDR, permission and roles. I thought there was a toggle to enable it, and I either missed it, you toggled it so quickly, or it is somewhere else. Yeah. And let's show it. Where do need to people toggle on, toggle off?
Correct. So as I mentioned, at the moment, customers are not forced to move to unified RBAC. It's in an opt-in mode. So once I'm ready as an admin with my custom roles, either created from scratch or imported from the workloads, and I verified, tested, everything is okay, then I have this button, Activate Workloads. Pressing this button opens this side panel, and we can see different toggles per workload. Every workload that has the ability to switch from the previous RBAC model to unified RBAC will have here the toggle. So once I'm ready with endpoints, for example, I just have to press this toggle, and after a few seconds, the XDR portal will switch the enforcement mechanism only for endpoints experiences and data, and access as of now will be calculated only based on these roles for Defender for Endpoint. As you can see, I can do it progressively, meaning if in my organization I have some policies that I have to test workload after workload, I'm ready with endpoints, I can activate. I'm moving on to email and collaboration, and then identity, maybe identity before email and collaboration, etc., etc.
I like it. It makes troubleshooting also easier, right? Because you turn it on everything, and then there is something you're not feeling right. Now you don't even know where to look at. Like now you really go one by one. This works. So that's pretty cool.
Correct.
Now, can we just click on the import roles? I just want to see what happens there.
Sure. So once I go into the journey of import roles, the end user is presented with those workloads that include at least one role that is a candidate for import. What it means, a candidate. A role must have an active assignment. There might be some roles, especially in email collaboration, there might be security roles that has no assignment. So we don't want to import them into unified RBAC. So now I have all three workloads ready with at least one role to be imported.
If you had a license, Defender for Cloud would be there?
In Defender for Cloud, there is no import mechanism. Defender for Cloud is only creating custom roles from scratch only.
Okay, thank you.
So I chose endpoints as an example.
Oh, yeah, and then you see the roles that you have, and you can even decide which one to import. It's not just a bulk.
Exactly. And you can decide to import some of them or all of them. And more than that, if you don't remember what it means, you can just press that and you can see what permissions are assigned within that role in Defender for Endpoint and who are assigned, who are the user groups that are assigned to that role. And by selecting that role, you can just import it and you can see the result.
So, you know, I'm always asking all these weird questions, but what if the group has the same name? It would make what would it make?
It wouldn't make anything. More than that, I can create in Unified RBAC another role with the exact same name. We are not restricting uniqueness based on names. If an admin has a reason to have two roles with the same name, we allow this level of flexibility. And now you can see this is the role I just imported. And we are adding this caption under the description that will remind the admin that this role is with full parity to Defender for Endpoint original role. Note that, as I mentioned earlier, I can modify this role. Okay, it says that this role was imported. Let's say that an admin, after importing this role, decided to add another permission, okay, or to add another assignment. Any change on the imported role, you can see that this role, the caption has disappeared, and this role is actually now like any other custom role that was created here in Unified RBAC. Important, this change has no impact on the original role in Defender for Endpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So, Gadi, toggles. That was it, right? That was just you enable it for the workloads, activate the workloads, and that's it. Awesome. Correct. So it's a lot, right? But I'm pretty sure that I know you and how you structured. There is a documentation, so people can go somewhere and read more and read, best practices and all these things.
Of course, everything is well documented in our public documentation, and even you have quick access from here. You just press that and you can go to our public documentation. It's well organized. Everything and more that I just explained in this demonstration is detailed there.
So, Gadi, that was exciting. And I know it's nothing that we just released, but I think we never talked about it. And it's so important to really encourage people to try it out, to trust it, and have one source of truth for the permissions and not like go around the different workloads. And you already shared a little bit what's coming. You know, I'm excited, especially to see, of course, the one additional missing workload coming, as well as I'm pretty sure you working with customers, there is a lot of feedback, a lot of additional things that people want to have that never stops. Is there any last word from you to our audience on Unified RBAC?
So yes, Heike, just want to make sure that you, our audience, will give it a shout. You try it. Don't be afraid testing it. You have the opportunity to opt in and then opt out. We believe that everything that you need in terms of your daily security operations is right there. And of course, we're open for any feedback with any of our channels that you can provide your feedback in.
Yes. Gadi, thank you so much for being my expert on today's show. Thanks everyone for watching. That's a wrap for our season, but stay tuned because we are continuing very soon with our next season, and look out on aka.ms/ninja show for what's coming. And I hope to see you all again soon. Bye.